Hello, IMDb Twitch. My name is Ian DeBora. This is Kevin McFarlane, and welcome back to What the Westworld Just Happened, Episode 5. All right, pretty big episode again. We got to go to Shogun World finally after a teaser in last season's finale, some random South by Southwest pop-ups, and 5 episodes. It took us 5 episodes of this season to finally get there, including a 1-episode break, right? Because they teased that at the end of episode 3.
Yeah.
Made people wait. So, oh yeah, Sean, we're going to be spoiling this pretty hard. So, I would not watch if you have
be
not
aware.
Seen it. Yes. But yeah, so, Kevin, let's see, what's the first thing you want to discuss here?
Well, I guess the episode doesn't even start in Shogun World, really, right? Like, it starts with I can't remember when the last time we saw the 2 weeks later part of the timeline here. It might have been a couple episodes ago, but we're watching after the hosts are getting dredged out of the lake, or the lake that shouldn't be there. And all of Delos is sort of trying to repair or just sort of diagnose what's going on with all the hosts that they've dredged out of the water, and they find that there's a third of the hosts that their brain units, or their whatever, I can't remember what the technical term for them is, cerebral unit or something like that. I don't remember.
Sure.
Their brains, for whatever, like that. That they're not just wiped, but they're, as they call them, virgin.
Which again, another biblical reference.
Yeah,
right?
There we go. Yeah, so another nod to that imagery or thematic element, and then so that if they're virgin brain units, then they've never been uploaded with anything, but they're in hosts in the park. So it's just sort of a logical missing link. And then the Delos employees, including that executive, are sort of looking at Bernard and just sort of wondering what's going on with him. It sort of seems like they know that he's not really with them, and that Bernard still hasn't quite put everything together yet.
Yeah, and I feel bad because Bernard, man, every episode he's just been like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening to me? But yeah, I think I think that, to me, that was one of the most interesting parts of the episode. I thought the episode was really good, but I think the plot point that kind of is going to move along the story most was actually that first scene that they don't refer to the rest of the episode. So I'm very curious as to where they go with that, because I agree. It seems like the Delos employees seem to know what's happening with Bernard, or they know that he is a little bit of a, I'm assuming they know he's a host, and they feel like they think that they also don't think he's telling the truth or really explaining what's going on there either.
Nah. For being such a small scene in the episode, it really loomed large over the rest of what was going on to me. I kept wondering how finding out that there are people who are wiped or otherwise, and now that I think about it, there's going to be a part of the episode that we get to where I think there might be a connecting dot. So we'll get there.
Yeah.
Right. But then let's dive into Shogun World, because Shogun World takes up, I think, the majority of the episode.
Yeah, 90%.
Yeah. So Maeve and Hector and Armistice and Lee are captured by a Ronin and his band of people out in the woods in Shogun World, and then we get confirmed very quickly from Lee that Shogun World is the hard mode of Westworld. It was for people who wanted a more difficult challenge or something. And in the behind the scenes stuff that they were talking about, basically I don't know, Westworld's a pretty violent place. You see people with knives, with guns, all that stuff. It's super, super gory. But in all the behind-the-scenes stuff, the creators and the effects people are all saying, this is really amping up the violence. And I didn't really understand that, but then it's all hand-to-hand combat. It's arrows,
it's very
and
physical.
Then swords. Exactly. So all of your combat, or by far most of it, has to happen in a very brutal, up-close, hand-to-hand fashion. You can't shoot somebody from paces away. And so that, I guess, very quickly comes to pass as we see, honestly, the part that I really didn't expect was that Shogun World is somewhat of a facsimile of Westworld in that Lee has basically copied and pasted storylines from Westworld onto Shogun World. And so what we see is the Hector Mariposa bank heist, or like safe heist, happen with Shogun World characters.
And something I really loved about that scene is, again, Hit Your Heroes in chat. He did call that out last week in the chat as well, so good on him. But the, yeah, I mean, I love the painted black. I love the slow motion recreation of the scene too. The dialogue was very similar. You know, I think it was...
People have been comparing shots from like the first episode and your first introduction to Sweetwater with your first introduction to this town, which we don't really get the name of.
I'm assuming it's whatever butterfly means in Japan, in Japanese maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
They did have the butterfly.
The Mariposa, thing where Hector and Maeve go by and see it. But yeah, it was really just sort of like shot for... to make you slowly realize as they walk into the town and then the story starts to play out that, oh, this is what we've seen in Westworld, and like how it dawns on each character's face of like, cool. Oh, wait, this is what I do. Oh, wait, that means that person's me. Wait a minute.
Yeah, when, what is it, Hector says, this seems too familiar.
Yeah.
And so at first when they said that, I actually was like, oh, he was repurposed or something like that. Like that's what my original thought was. So I thought it was really cool when it turned out to be like
the story.
Nope.
Yeah.
This is familiar to you because it's literally like what.
And honestly, like
the
thing that struck me most about it was that like once that started happening, I got a little bit worried that like what the only thing we were gonna do for the rest of the episode was just sort of like hold mirrors up to each character, just try and figure that out. But there is something to be said like about the like investigation of identity and your sort of personal story and your existential like awareness, that how destabilizing would it be to walk into a scenario where there's somebody who's basically doing the same thing. It would be like in the Truman Show if Jim Carrey happens upon like a different town where there's like everything's the same but it's somebody else is the Truman. Like it'd be your world would be completely destabilized in a different way. And so
there's something. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, something that was on that, it was kind of interesting to see how each character handled it, right? They all handled it in different ways. Maeve obviously took to it as a, like, you and I should work towards the same sort of goal, or I want to have you realize your goal because it's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Armistice was a much more...
curious. It was just curious. It was just like, you have tattoos in the same place I have tattoos. What's going on here?
And then Hector was sort of like a jealousy, like, hey... I'm like the big, I'm the badass in town.
Yeah, because he keeps saying to Maeve, like, I don't trust this guy. It was sort of like, he's you, man.
Yeah.
You got to trust yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that whole opening sequence was so cool. Really well done. But it does make me wonder, as a guest, how would, if you don't speak Japanese, do they switch from Japanese and English? Or would you have to have a translator with you? Because they do say like the bots or the hosts do have to speak, have multiple languages. But wouldn't that like ruin the vibe?
I'm not so sure, but I think it would. But what if those tourists went to Westworld and they didn't speak English? Like, would they know to speak Japanese? I think it's just sort of you blend seamlessly with what it is that like us being observers of the story, we find it interesting that most of the episodes in Japanese. But if you were just in Westworld and didn't speak English, or if you were going to Shogun World and didn't speak Japanese, like it would just sort of blend and become English, and then it would be fine. And then I guess the other thing that we didn't hear anybody in the Raj speak anything other than English, did we? Because there's that host who comes up to the other human to ask him about a plot line to go on.
But for the time, it makes sense, right? It is colonial India.
But not for the non-white characters, I would say. So, like, maybe they do shift to the language of the visitors in order to better integrate them into the story and welcome them in and try and make the barrier be that they're unfamiliar with the world, not that they can't speak the language.
Right. Cool. So in Shogun World, we made a host of new characters, but I think most importantly, and what we were talking about in terms of the parallel characters of our leads, we meet I guess who's gonna be who's the Maeve, right, of Shogun World. Her name is Akane, played by Rinko Kikuchi, who is
from Pacific Rim.
Yeah, Pacific Rim, exactly. The original one, and she's a Japanese actress, and she has, let's see, 52 actress credits on IMDb, actually. And
she's really good. She's a really solid actress, and like that's great casting to put her in there.
She is amazing. So we meet her in the geisha house, and her parallel is that she ends up having her youngest geisha, and probably her
like the star, her Clementine, basically.
Her Clementine, basically, right, gets kidnapped, and Maeve relates to that because obviously in her goal to find her daughter.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Well, I thought it was interesting that my concern when they drew that parallel was going to be that it was exactly the same, that Akane was going to be a repurposed former sharecropper or whatever it was, former farmer who had lost her daughter or something, that they were going to like really heavily parallel it. Right. But it seems like what they were doing was that they were just subbing her in a story. They were copying the storyline and not the exact backstory. And that was what I really liked about the sort of mirrored versions, was that it wasn't an exact copy. It was just familiar enough to make you doubt that your memories and your identity, and how far they've all come from breaking out of Westworld, what that really means to them. And like
Sizemore says, you try writing 300 stories a week.
Exactly. Yeah. That it's such an interesting thing and he's sort of trying to justify it, and the storyline is copied for sure. And it's definitely like, it's not just like I stole little bits and pieces. It's basically a direct copy of that storyline. But what's interesting about it is when Lee starts to freak out that the storyline is getting off the rails, that ninjas are showing up where they shouldn't be, and characters are saying things or doing things that they never would. Lee's like watching that, Akane basically predicting Akane is going to have to give away her best geisha to go to the Shogun, and instead Akane just violently stabs a dude in the eye. Yeah. And Lee's very unsettled with that. But those bits were like the parts where it made the most sense to me that they were doing this kind of a storyline for the episode of Westworld. That it wasn't just, this is a copy and you have to deal with finding your copy. It's that everybody has moved off in different directions from their designated path, and how they've moved off of those paths is the thing we need to find out and figure out. I don't know. Do you want to fast forward to our Shogun area, because that, I guess, that in some way that solves what's going on in Shogun world, like how things are going off the rails specifically.
Yeah, and we do get to see Lutz and what's the other technician?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, those guys as essentially made servants.
Yeah, as made servants, which I thought was pretty funny, and then. I thought that was a funny little thing to see there. Is it
Sylvester?
Yeah, Sylvester and Lutz, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, so they make their way over to the Shogun hideout eventually. There's a handful of pretty awesome fight sequences.
Mm-hmm.
But in that first fight sequence, actually, before they get to the Shogun hideout, we find out that Maeve has tapped a new super ability, right? So Maeve is able to telepathically control hosts, which is kind of wild.
Definitely not unsettling at all.
Yes, definitely not unsettling at all. And the power of Wi-Fi. And
right. That did make me think of the like communication, the file communication stuff that Bernard and Charlotte have been talked about in a previous episode, that that file transfer could happen. So it's perfectly conceivable that on a localized network or something within short range, that Maeve would be able to communicate to everybody.
Yes, and we'll talk about this more later, but should note that the only time we've seen this happen otherwise is when Ford did it. Ford has been able to do it, so curious.
And the only thing he did with it was just pause. He didn't telepathically tell people to do stuff or to violently go against their sort of protocol.
Yep.
But I guess so. Then we arrive at the Shogun palace or camp. I guess it's not.
Yeah, it's a camp hideout or something like that.
Yeah, because they're not supposed to come into the town. The Shogun is supposed to camp outside the town. But he's leaking cerebral fluid or whatever. the same thing that was happening to Bernard. So he's
Yep.
the Shogun is decaying, which is leading them to do things they wouldn't normally do, and like maybe order things they normally wouldn't order.
Yep.
And so the narrative, it seems like the narrative rot of Shogun World leads back to the improper, like the time that they haven't been able to maintenance the Shogun,
Right.
And he's malfunctioning, and that's what's
Right.
causing all of this. So I guess they were worried that everybody had woken up in the same
Yes.
way as Westworld, and it's
Yes.
not what's going on in Shogun World. It all traces back to some character malfunctions.
Correct. Yeah.
Which is, I guess, an interesting reveal insofar that it does mean that the awareness is localized to Westworld.
And I mean, I think that could be more of a storytelling device, because you can't have a bunch of woke hosts running around, all with their own like specific ambitions and goals. Right? It's good that I think Maeve and Dolores are driving those storylines.
Yeah, but it seems like the malfunctioning is park wide, or like the entire island wide, because we've seen the Raj malfunctioning and turning on hosts.
Yes, they're just at different levels.
Yeah, we didn't see any other guests in Shogun World. We don't know.
Not that
Yeah, that would be sort of interesting to note. I didn't really look a lot at the screens or anything, so I don't really know like how many people go to Westworld versus how many people go to Shogun World for the advanced play there. Like, how does not getting injured, like you can't shoot a host, or you can't shoot a guest.
I was thinking about the swords too.
Yeah, how do swords not hurt people in Shogun World? Like, it's a bit of there's a lot more questions that I want unanswered from what's going on.
Well, I mean, they could all be dead. We did see all of the security guards hung up on various posts along the way.
That's
so
true.
They could have been involved there.
Yeah.
So the big thing that happens in Shogun World is, Akane wants to go there to parlay for her, to get her. What is her apprentice's name?
It starts with an S? Sakura? Is that
Sakura?
Is that
Right,
Sakura.
Okay. Yeah. To parlay for Sakura.
Man, guessing a Japanese name, not a good gamble to take, but I won that one.
Yes, you did win that one. Well, Sakura and Clementine are both flowers.
Yeah.
Right? I think that was the tie in there.
Hey,
and Sakura, the Shogun says, okay, you have to dance for me instead, and which leads to I think one of the more crazy action sequences we've actually seen in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a pretty big reveal. So, Sakura, Maeve basically asks Sakura, you can leave with me now, and we can go find, you can meet my daughter, all that sort of stuff. And then, Sakura decides it seems to take the honorable route, and rather than run, she wants to fight to save her herself. And Sakura and Maeve seems to think that she probably thinks she's seen this before. It's not going to go the way she thinks. And as Akane is getting ready to dance for the Shogun walks up and kills Sakura in a pretty shameless stab.
Just here's a blade right to the gut. He seems to have wanted Sakura so badly, and then just throws it all away. Malfunctioning. He's malfunctioning, right? So we don't really know what's going on there.
Sure.
But there is that moment right before that. Sorry to steal your thunder on that, but when they're talking, when Sakura is preparing and putting on her geisha makeup, and then Maeve says Akane's line, finishes her story.
Yes.
Like that they have the same thoughts in their head somewhere, like their backstory or their key memories or their key storylines are embedded there and are somewhat similar. And is that the point at which Maeve tries to wake Akane up?
Yeah, and she stops it.
Yeah. So that was an interesting so there is some free will there that she sees what Maeve or understands what Maeve is trying to do on some level and refuses it.
It could be a full level, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, because I did take a note that most of the Shogun characters knew to not listen or to cover Maeve's mouth, when no one in Westworld has figured that out, right? None of the Westworld hosts have realized hey, we shouldn't just let her talk. And then
that is an interesting one, that they can't because Maeve's talking commands don't work. Seemingly. but
Yeah.
the Ronin is still like, gag this one. The talking is a problem.
And let me cut off all the ears of all my guards.
Yeah.
Which is a very short-term solution
because they think she's a witch. That's right. Oh, they call her a witch.
Yeah.
So interesting.
And it's like, if you're really a shogun general, you'd cut off all the ears of your dudes for like this one situation.
Well, it's not even just they cut off the ears. They cut off the ears and like sew them shut.
Yeah, and
right?
sew them shut. Yeah,
that was
correct.
grisly.
Yeah, not cut off, but they burn them shut is what it may have been. So yeah.
So then back to what happens after the Shogun kills Sakura.
Yeah, and there's a very good line where Sakura fights back immediately, and the Sakura and Maeve are put up to what looks like they're about to be quickly executed, and Maeve says the line, "You're quite the mother," or "You're a wonderful mother," right?
Yeah.
And Sakura thanks you, and it's at that point I feel like Maeve was kind of testing Sakura to see, not Sakura, Akane to see how she would react, because it's at that point that Maeve like, okay, like you can come with me, and like she kind of turns on the psychic powers and like gets them out of danger. What are your thoughts on that?
Did we hit the Shogun getting murdered? Akane brutally murders the Shogun.
Yeah, brutally
right?
murders the Shogun.
Yeah, like with a very small blade.
Yeah, in the same way that she killed his henchman also.
That's right. Yeah, just like
right,
a circle right around the head, and just like,
right.
Man, that shot of like the head flopping and him standing up and then falling over. Jesus.
Yes. I mean, it's very, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but it's very homage to like old Japanese martial arts films, like the dramatic fall over and things like that. But
sure.
So what were your thoughts on that little interaction, and then Maeve all of a sudden feeling like, okay, I can save us now?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really understand that she was doing it purposefully. That she was saying, okay, I'll save us now, but it was like, I am going to try and save us.
Okay.
And in that, she was like, she succeeds. And it's a little surprising to her, even, I thought, that she was able to not just control one person, but alter the entire course of that battle, where it seems like, oh, everybody's about to get axed, and just turn the entire Shogun's army against each other so that they get to survive that. But even then, the next step is that the entire rest of the Shogun's army is coming. And like, we cut out at Maeve picking up a sword and saying, "I found a new voice." I think a couple weeks ago, when they were just arriving in Shogun World, we talked about, and one of the things that I was wondering is whether Maeve was going to get herself an army. And so I'm curious as to what happens there, whether she's like going to turn them loyal to her, or whether she needs to defeat all of them and rack up a crazy body count, turning everybody against each other so that they all fight to the death.
Right.
And I guess, is there anything else major that happens in Shogun World, or is that?
I don't think so. Although, we could talk about the highlights. But
sure.
I think
we'll get to our scene highlights, but then and we should talk about what happens with Dolores and Teddy.
Quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, so in Westworld, Dolores and Teddy and her band show up at Sweetwater, and Sweetwater is decimated.
Yes, completely.
Yeah, and the train is non-functional, seemingly, and has sort of seen better days. But basically, the instructions are, strip everything you don't need off the train. We're going to use it to get where we need to go. And Dolores takes Teddy away. Do you remember exactly what the pre-romantic moments are with them?
So she just says, let's go for here. So she goes to this field where they used to overlook, that I think in the first season they overlook a couple times, and she kind of tests him with a very cryptic message about, Teddy wants to write. Teddy was like, why don't we just stay here? We just go off in the distance.
Right. He's still offering this. The someday can be today.
Yeah, someday could be today, and we just live here. And then at which Dolores gets probably disappointed again. That seemed to have been her like final like test of him, and she gives him that weird flies.
Yeah, what did you think of that story? So the story is like the year we almost lost the herd.
Yes, and which they have talked about before. I kind of remember it, but
but like, it's a memory that clearly didn't happen. and she's still dredging it up for this allegorical moment. So like,
Right.
and
she
she is trying to
technically
break
knows that
out of-
never happened.
I guess, does she? But she's still using the story. She's like, she's
Yeah.
still using it to inform her decision making, whether or
Oh,
not she
I
realizes
see.
it. Because it's like she's bringing up the anecdote as like the year that we lost the herd, blue tongue, some like cow
Right.
disease spreading through the herd, and she says to Teddy, "What do you do? Do you
Yeah.
kill or do you try and save?" And Teddy's option is quarantine all the sick cows, keep them
Yes.
away from the herd, and you'll be able to stave it off and you'll be able to heal them. And
Yes.
Maeve's response is no. Like in our mind, is like, no, you poor sap. Basically, you have to kill them all. You have
Yeah.
to kill all of them. You put them in a giant funeral pyre, and the fire and the smell and the smoke chiefly
We'll keep away
keeps
the
away the flies, which are
Yeah.
spreading the disease. So you have to basically be willing to sacrifice what is necessary in order to
Yes.
save for the like save and persist into the future. Like the allegory or the metaphor is clear in there, but
Yes.
the most interesting part of that to me is that it's a Ford or Lee or somebody created memory. And so she's
Right.
using a created memory to justify her actions now that she's aware, and doesn't seem to be using it as anything other than, here is a story from my memory that I'm just calling up. She's not like breaking any walls there with,
Right.
I know that this isn't real, but I have this memory of what
Interesting.
happened. So she's
Interesting.
just using it as something that she actually remembers.
Interesting.
And then,
Okay,
and
I can
then,
get along with that.
and then we get the sex scene, where our
Yes.
first, or I guess since Hector and Maeve,
Yes, but that's the first time we've seen
the two of them.
Dolores and the two of them get together.
I guess they've never consummated that relationship. They've like kissed or hugged and stuff,
Yeah.
but they've never really, they've
Yeah.
never fully consummated that relationship.
Yeah. Which leads to the very bizarre, there was a kind of a feeling of dread the whole episode.
Yeah.
And poor
How many more ways is Teddy gonna find to die?
yeah,
Seriously.
poor Teddy. So he gets led to this barn. Dolores has a pretty evil villain move and puts her has a dead cow decaying in a barn, and
Yeah,
basically-
which, Jesus.
yeah, gnarly. Which in which she pulls in her technician, her tag along guy, equivalent to Maeve has a handful of technicians with her.
Yeah, I totally
And-
forgot about that when that's where he was from. I was sort of
Right.
wondering what in the world.
Yeah.
And
So
so
he's a
she's enslaved a technician.
also, yes, correct.
That's a little bit.
Yeah, and Teddy got overwritten, rather than died, right? Which is curious, and I'm trying to find.
Yeah, so
someone-
I haven't seen the close-up view of the monitor. If we
That's
get
literally what I'm
it's-
looking for
yeah.
right now.
Because like I went back and looked at it, and it cut away as he was uploading the thing, so I didn't really
Right.
know. But that is an interesting, like, that he doesn't just get killed; he's not getting wiped; he's being superseded by another.
It said overwritten,
Yeah.
and there is a link on Reddit somewhere that I'm looking for. I can't find it. Right, I'll keep looking for a bit, but
Yeah, I guess so. The thing that I'll monologue for a bit on at that point is that like Teddy, she's basically pulls the same like not all of us are supposed to make it to the promised land kind of metaphor, where Teddy this is his punishment in a way for not like proving himself to Maeve or to Dolores by killing the Confederados, that he
Right.
proves too forgiving, and her vision doesn't allow for compassion and forgiveness. She needs total loyalty and a commitment to like violent overthrow of the humans on
Yeah.
a global scale outside
Yes.
the park and in. And Teddy can't go along with that as much as he loves Dolores. And
Right.
so he has to be sacrificed, and it's part of her story. It's the part that she doesn't want to sacrifice, but you gotta hack off a limb to save the body at some point, and
Right.
that's what she's doing.
And okay, so I know we've talked about this, and people, the community online has kind of spoken about how they've been kind of getting a little over Dolores's sort of grandiose dialogue,
Which
but to me-
I have criticized at length
Yes.
multiple weeks. here.
Yes, and I think now that she has gone full heel turn, or at least in my opinion, I think she's gone full heel turn
Yeah.
as of this episode. I actually will adjust my thoughts on her dialogue in previous, because now that she is full villain, I feel like I'm giving it it makes much more sense, right? Like she's been building up to become this like she's not speaking like in a way to inspire.
Well, and it's she's following through on her she's following through with action on what she's saying. Like she watches Teddy disobey orders.
Yes.
She asks him what he would do with like a parable or a fable, essentially. What decision would you make in this situation? He answers wrong, and she doesn't like monologue as a Bond villain until he can escape. She's just like, we gotta change you, and then does it. Like she this was one of the few times I think so far this season since she has become this character where the actions justify her sort of grandiosity in speech.
Yes,
where she follows it up. So like that's what it needs. It's not. I don't have a problem with like the tone of it generally. I just need it to have some oomph or some gravity to it, that it means something in action, and she's not just sort of pompously walking around talking dark to everybody.
Right. Yeah, I can't find the overwritten Teddy, but from what I remember, when I looked last night, I don't know why I didn't bookmark it, but I know his loyalty was all the way up before, and that got like shrunk down.
Yeah.
I think his aggressiveness got put up too. It looks like he's completely shifted. They've completely shifted almost all of his things. But what's curious about that is that the tech who runs around with Dolores / Wyatt, I think at Wyatt at this point is basically what she's going to start going by.
Yeah, I sort of wonder about that. Like, so, like, I do wonder whether
he warned her.
Yeah.
Saying this might not be good. So.
And then, like, the other thing that I wondered is whether or not she was going to upload Wyatt again. Like, if she was just going to clone Wyatt as a thing. That was one thing that, like, is that possible? Can you upload somebody's
two versions of
the same
I didn't think
post?
about that.
That was what I was curious about, whether she was, like, programming him with some compliant and violent personality. Or whether she was uploading Wyatt again.
Herself, basically.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Because she's been adjusted to have Wyatt within her, right?
Right.
And so it's possible to implant that if it's possible to implant that personality into a host who already has one. Maybe you can do it again with the same.
I like that. That's a very hot take, and I like that. I think that'd be very cool. Except I do like I would like to see Teddy go head to head with her at some point.
Yeah, I would like to see Teddy really get to a point where he's independent and isn't afraid to, like, acts like he has nothing to lose.
Yep.
In those sorts of situations. Yep. And I guess that sort of covers every plot point.
So let's you want to go into our theories or highlights of that?
Let's do some highlights, because we got to talk about some musical moments.
Let's do highlights here. All right, so I think we were texting last night. I believe, at least this is my favorite moment and favorite musical moment of the show.
Oh yeah, I think so too.
The use of Wu-Tang Clan's "Cream," "Casuals," "Everything Around Me" off of their album "Enter the 36 Chambers."
Which, have you seen how people have gone with the cash, the double meaning of cash as like money, but also like a digital cash?
Interesting. Like CACHE.
Yeah,
nice.
It's just like a nice little double meaning in there. Nice. It's just like, yes, this is even better music.
Yeah, that's awesome. During the pretty epic fight scene when Akane fights back against the Shogun.
Yeah.
And does her dance and then into the Shogun. So I thought that was so cool. I'm a big Wu-Tang Clan fan, but also, for those who are unfamiliar, Wu-Tang Clan is heavily influenced by Japanese cinema and Japanese culture. The RZA, who was their head producer, this album, Enter the 36 Chambers, is named after an old martial arts film, and through the whole album they just used lots of martial arts film sound effects and samples and things like that. So I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, it was a nice little nod to that career.
Yeah,
that just sort of oeuvre of the Wu-Tang.
Exactly, and I think that whole sequence is probably my favorite sequence of the episode. Like it felt like we talked about this a little bit off stream. It felt like an old martial arts film. There's a lot of grandiose blood, like you said, like the slow fall over after he got stabbed in the eye. But the thing I liked a lot is after the Shogun kills Sakura, he walks away and he flings his sword down, and
Yeah.
you hear the blood splatter, which is which is a very, very cool. That's a really good
old martial arts samurai film sound effects.
Very old sound effects, and at least I know it came off because a lot of people, not to be too hipster and holier than thou, but a lot of people on Reddit were like, oh, such a good Tarantino. It felt like Tarantino, which is good, which is fine.
The Kill Bill, look, Kill Bill Volume 1, it has a lot of feeling of it because it's aping those films in the same way as Kill Bill is
which
aping.
is fine. I mean, I think Kill Bill is an awesome movie, so I do appreciate that. But
yeah.
So I'm glad it came off too to people who, if their only experience with martial arts films or kung fu films is Kill Bill, they still appreciated that it felt like, that's what they're going for.
Like if not like the Shaw Brothers movies or something, like if there's I think one of the easier places to start with like Kurosawa, because Kurosawa like made so many just like giant epic movies, or things like Rashomon that are more like narratively creative than necessarily like classic samurai tales. I would honestly say start with Yojimbo. Yojimbo is like isn't it basically Fistful of Dollars? What Fistful of Dollars is based on?
Yeah,
so like
I mean, a lot of westerns are just sort of based off Japanese cinema in general.
Yeah. So like, I would if there is a movie that you want to go back to just or have never seen any of that stuff and want to like pick one that's pretty short and pretty gonna get you like the bare bones of like, oh, I have seen these touches elsewhere in the history of cinema and television before. I feel like Yojimbo is the easiest one.
Yeah, or Throne of Blood.
Oh,
also.
for sure. Yeah, the Macbeth adaptation, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's. Yeah, I'm a big Kurosawa guy in general too, and like Japanese.
Love it.
I was talking on the stream earlier today. I watched much more Japanese stuff than Chinese cinema. So the whole episode I thought was really good.
Yeah.
In terms of that, what other highlights did you have?
Honestly, the opening of the town in Shogun World, like that slow realization, I think is really just like a beautifully edited. And it leads the viewers. It really puts the viewers in the same spot as the Westworld denizens as they sort of arrive into that town. That you have this eerie feeling of familiarity, and you can't quite put your finger on why. And they all look around and they're like, "This is, I recognize what's going on here, but I don't really understand." And then it all clicks into place in the same time, and that was really cool. And honestly, the sex scene between Dolores and Teddy, I thought that was really nice, and we get a welcomely gratuitous shot of James Marsden's butt.
That's true.
Right there at the end.
Very gratuitous and very golden lit.
Yeah, like none of Dolores, none of that, but just like there's James Marsden.
Give what the people want.
Yeah, give
James
everybody
Marsden,
what they want, which is James Marsden perfectly sculpted right there.
That was good. So something that I appreciated quite a bit that I liked is when it involves Sylvester and what's the other shoot? Now I'm blanking.
Lutz?
And Lutz.
We can only remember one name at a time. We gotta
I know. Sylvester and Lutz, when they're kind of walking down, and Sylvester is like, "Hey, Lutz, can't you like speak to them? Like, don't you know what they're saying?" And Lutz goes, "I'm from Hong Kong, asshole." And I thought that was a nice little touch there.
Yeah.
It was a really, really easy way to kind of address the obvious, address a little socio-political stuff that kind of goes on today. And I thought that was a nice little thing.
There's been like the topic of cultural appropriation has been like a very big deal. There was that prom dress thing that was going around, and then Nicki Minaj's performance on SNL this past weekend, the Chun-Li stuff, and there have been lots of conversations about cultural appropriation in the past like 2 or 3 years, which are very welcome and necessary conversations to be having. And I think Westworld went to a great deal of effort to try and make it as like authentically Japanese and not appropriated as possible. There's no, go ahead.
I would say they didn't do a thing where, even again, I want to say Tarantino does this in one of his, Tarantino does this in the beginning of Inglourious Bastards, to a different effect, but they could have done something where, all the hosts, will speak English now because they're speaking English to you, but they still took the time to film almost entirely in Japanese during all the Shogun sequence,
including everybody who doesn't belong in Shogun World.
Exactly, which I thought was great, and I think it was very cool that it did felt like, and we talked earlier, like it did feel like a Japanese like film, like the film grain they used on it, or like the post effects. Was it in film?
I don't think so, but they definitely lit it, and like there was some like technical like digital treatment to it. The behind the scenes video from this episode. Okay. Normally they're like 4 or 5 minutes long. This one's like 13 minutes, and it delves into a ton of different stuff that they did, and they were like very comprehensive in the set design and the production design in all of it. How much they were trying to make it like essentially like Kurosawa. It's Edo period.
Like Edo.
Edo. Yeah. That period in Japanese history, like they were trying to be as well tuned to that as they possibly could be. And I don't know. I think it's a success, and I think putting those humorous touches in there with Sylvester like talking back to Lutz that calls attention to the where it could go wrong. I mean, you're still in like their vision of that time. They are still choosing like the most Western
version of
romanticized period of Japanese history to go to, where there are shoguns and geishas and like the elements of there are still, it's still a theme park on some level. So that does make sense to me, but it wasn't cheaply done, I guess.
Cool. All right, so let's go into theories here.
Cool.
All right. I know you had a couple, or at least one.
I guess we kind of already touched on it. She's uploaded Wyatt again. That's the thing that that's the theory that I'm like kind of wrapped up in. I guess the one plot point we didn't really talk about was Lee. What happens with Lee? That en route to the Shogun camp, Lee grabs a walkie-talkie off of one of the dead security guards. So Lee, presumably hidden now, has a communication link to the outside world or to somewhere else in the park. And the reason they were going, what they need to do past the Shogun camp is go to Snow Lake. That's the location that they're trying to get to, because Snow Lake has a link to the tunnels back to like
wherever,
safety
somewhere else. So a couple things on that. I think the thing that interested me about Snow Lake is that they're going to a body of water.
Yeah.
Right? Which seems to be the overall theme of most of the hosts. They're all trying to get somewhere where there's a body of water. And then again, biblical references. Obviously, water has a huge, it means a lot in Christianity, in biblical references, stuff like that. Obviously, baptisms in the water. Jesus walked on water. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that involve bodies of water that relate to it. So I think that's all very interesting to me as well.
The other thing we've seen over the past couple episodes, like the things that we keep dropping, the location that they seem to all be converging on is called the Cradle.
Yes.
There was a big old theory video that came out.
I didn't watch that yet. Did you watch that? I should have watched it.
I watched a couple minutes of it. I haven't watched it all the way through, but it really does. It's one of the best ones. It has a good feel of like the old True Detective theory videos. Honestly, it's what it feels.
Those are some good times.
Yeah. So it's like a very in-depth. It's like a 10 or 12-minute video or something, and it's very in-depth into this. What is the Cradle? Where is the Cradle? That sort of stuff. So that is where they're converging. And that Cradle gets said in this episode as well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We know that as a location that they are journeying to.
Yeah. So. The only big theory I had in this episode may have been debunked in the very same episode, but I'm going to say it anyway. So I get the impression that Sizemore is more aware or is kind of playing along more than he needs to, and I feel like he knows something that that Maeve doesn't, because there's a couple things. And this one, Maeve says, like, is that where my daughter is? And Sizemore kind of looks at her, and like the conversation kind of just passes, but they're talking about Snow Lake, I think. And Sizemore seems to he keeps on pushing Maeve to do things to like level her up, as I've been calling it in my house as I've been watching. That, he says, he kind of remind her, hey, you got to speak Japanese, like nudge nudge. And kind of gives her the ways to get out of these situations that obviously keeps him alive. Now, it may have been debunked because A, he does grab that cell phone, and then B, she figures out the telepathy on her own. But I don't know. I feel like he seems to know like a little more than what we're being led to believe.
Maybe that he's stress testing her, like he's putting her into situations where he thinks she's going to be forced to act in a way that will reveal more powers,
right?
or
And then
more abilities.
Yeah, and the other thing, that reason I think that is just from a storytelling standpoint, is because he was kind of like the goofball, the comedic release, for their storyline. But now they have Sylvester and Lutz tailing around with them now, so they have two of them, right? So I'm thinking they may like switch his storyline to be more of a straight character versus the comedic goofball guy. Like there's that shot of him with the suspenders and whatever. So I don't know. That, again, could have been debunked this episode.
But like him speaking Japanese, I thought was a nice touch too.
Exactly, that's what I mean. Yeah, it makes him more serious. So.
Yeah, it's not that he's just like a goofball who's like whiny because he doesn't have the authority of Ford and wants to like have the keys to the kingdom. He actually is pretty decent at his job.
Correct.
He needs to be able to speak multiple languages and write a ton of storylines and do that sort of thing.
Yeah. So
the other interesting theory that I saw that I really, really liked was that there was an F. Scott Fitzgerald quote that's been floating around.
Oh,
did you see this one?
See that one? No, I didn't.
The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Which gets tied in. The person who was theorizing about this was that's what happens to Maeve here. That she sees that her Hearst backstory isn't unique and has been copied, and that she is not, her memories and her identity isn't just hers. That it's not unique; it belongs to somebody else too. But she pairs with Akane and I don't know, commiserates, finds a friend even in their similarity, instead of breaking down. She accepts and incorporates that mirror into her identity and her acceptance of the world around her. So that's sort of kind of another step up, I guess, in accepting her consciousness. And it's so interesting that as her powers expand, she's still deviating from Dolores. They both reached the same level, but from that level have gone in very different directions with it.
Right, and I think Maeve,
that it's allowed them to do.
Right, and I think Maeve is still far more advanced than Dolores. I feel like if they come head to head at some point, Dolores has a ways to go to.
Well, Maeve's got the powers, but Dolores actually has the army. Dolores has the soldiers and the followers. She's essentially a cult leader.
Yeah.
On some level, and Maeve is not trying to do that. She's not really trying to attract followers. No, because she has
she even ditches
personal.
Hector, right?
Yeah, she's got a singular personal goal. In this fight.
Yep. Real quickly, did you have anything else?
Nope.
I was gonna say, before we jump to a quick run through of the next week's preview, I do want to give a call out to Clementine in that really heartbreaking scene. Where they get back into the saloon, and it seems like Clementine knows that she's still a bot, but she wants to be free because she's having an interaction with the only alive host in that whole saloon, and she just looks so sad.
Where she just realizes oh, I've been replaced. Because she was decommissioned. Remember, they broke her out of
because she does the line, "You got grime on you" or whatever. Yeah.
So they replaced Clementine, and that's the only surviving person in the Mariposa in Sweetwater.
Right. Which is saying where their priorities are.
Yeah, but then Dolores basically just shuts that shit down.
Yeah.
And moves them along immediately. But it is a really weird moment that they new Clementine just stands in the Mariposa as they walk away.
Yeah, yeah.
Sort of
it's kind of
purposeless.
I think it just shows that she's just not fully as awake as the others. But anyway, so we got a very juicy preview next week. Yeah. So let's run through that really quickly. Oh, that's IMDb. Hello. Is that it?
Yeah, it was kind of a longer preview, I want to say.
It was a very long preview. Is this it? Okay, so we'll get going from the start here.
If you outgrow this place, outgrow us, what would become of you? think I have a choice to make.
No. He didn't say that.
Okay, so I'll pause at that. So it's that first interaction between Bernard and Dolores, where we get to see Bernard kind of.
That we know it's Bernard.
Yeah,
clearly.
Right. We know it's Bernard.
Yeah,
right?
because Dolores' reaction, we know that it's.
She says no, he didn't say that.
Yeah,
right?
so it's not Arnold. It's Bernard.
Yeah, so is it he trying to tap into Arnold, or, I don't know. And when does that happen? When does this happen? She's dressed up as, she's not in evil Dolores outfit yet.
Yeah,
right?
she's in like her regular Dolores Abernathy outfit.
Yeah, so that's very, very curious.
Oh, I guess the other thing that we never talked about from that opening scene was that they're still looking for Abernathy. So Abernathy still eludes them.
Sorry. Or again, like I've said before,
exactly.
Everyone thinks they're so confirmed with all the time. When I think most people are very, very wrong.
Or that Delos is Abernathy, as we've discussed in those tea pouring whatever. Like
the
5 centimeters, like 5 centimeters to the left or whatever to the right.
Yep.
Anyway, back to our preview.
Yeah. All right.
The cradle's fighting.
So then we get the cradle mentioned again.
Yes, the cradle. Bernard with the shotgun, looking real evil.
Yeah. With Elsie, your favorite character on the show.
Yes, we get Elsie and we get the headset on, and it looks like he's seeing. What's that gladiator field?
The Elysian Fields.
Yeah. So we usually see that with Maeve, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't look like her hand, so I'm very curious where that's gonna go. And then we get followed up with what looks like Teddy picking up the condensed milk again.
Yeah, but
which I think is cool.
But sort of missing it at first. It looked like he just passed it before he grabs
catch
it.
That, so he might be miscalibrated too.
Yeah,
that's a good catch.
Does he normally wear a black hat? That was the other thing that threw me off.
Man, you were catching all this stuff that I did not catch. I'm not sure actually.
But it did seem weird. I was like trying to find what's different about that, or like then the screen that we get there.
Yeah.
The terminal. I feel like I got to zoom in on everything there and figure out what the hell's going on in that.
He also holds a bullet, which is kind of interesting.
That's right.
It looks like he overreaches the milk can and goes to the bullet. So that could show his character change, right? He's not looking to help someone; he's looking to hurt someone.
Yeah, I'm like reading off this system like panel, and it says like admin privileges disabled, Delos host memory access error. Like just an error, host located, revoked admin privileges deleted, which is just a lot. There's a lot of like orders going on in whoever this is that we can't exactly see,
or whatever this is. Too,
yeah, right.
And then moving along, we have some more action in Shogun World, which looks great.
We got the map.
Blood splattered Maeve.
Yeah, so we're clearly staying in Shogun World for a little while.
Yeah. And then this is interesting to me. So we finally get some progress in that red room. It looks like they have the map set up again, because previously we've only seen little 10-second snippets of that red room.
Yeah.
And it's been completely destroyed basically every time. So it looks like we finally get to move something along there, which was interesting to me as well.
Yeah, they're getting the map. We see some airmailed packages landing in the middle of a bunch of military guys.
Which again confirms that they can be doing air drops.
Right? So why are they taking boats? What's going on here?
Yes. Okay, and then we get the real juicy stuff. It looks like they have found Abernathy. They are catching him, and they are hitting him with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, they're like tying him down. They're drilling him or shocking him or something.
Yep.
And then for whatever reason, the final thing is Bernard walking by Teddy.
Who doesn't seem to see him?
Yeah, and like, what's going on there now?
Yeah. It was a very good preview. This is a very exciting preview.
But the other thing that's not there, no Man in Black. So
that's 2 episodes in a row then, potentially.
Yeah,
no Man in Black at all. I mean, there wasn't even a William in this last episode.
Yeah,
it's a good call. Trying to think here. Yeah, was there anything else you wanted to call out? 1 to 10.
Oh, sure. Honestly, like now that we've talked about it, I feel much better about it. I think honestly, in the aftermath of it, I was sort of like, that was underwhelming. I was underwhelmed by Shogun World, and I was really looking forward to that. But I think I'd bump it up now that we've like talked about sort of the thematic significance of certain elements of it to like an 8. I think it's an 8. Still not as good as last week for me, but yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that as an 8 as well. That was one of my favorite episodes of the season too. Again, I agree the plotline wasn't as pushed forward as the other episodes, but just in terms of like environment and all this sort of stuff, I thought it was very well done.
Yeah, it looks really cool. And then like I don't know, the music moments and just like the editing of it, the visual structure, I was really impressed by this time around.
Very good. Cool, awesome. Well, that was a fun little chat there. Kevin, as always, where can people find you to follow along with your film escapades?
Indeed. You can find me on Twitter at KM_McFarland, McFarland.
Awesome. For everyone else, we'll be back here next Wednesday again. Oh, wait. Is there an episode?
Yeah, we're running. I think we're running straight through. I think we
cool.
we looked that up. I'm pretty sure we looked that up.
Okay, so we'll be back next Monday to talk about the 6th episode of Westworld. And if you want to come back, we'll be here this Wednesday, or I'll be here Wednesday at noon to talk about more stuff for the IMDb Twitch stream. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. Kevin, have a very good week.
You too.
Everyone else, we will talk to you guys later.